Hi there, and welcome back for another exciting episode of Lounge Talk with Laz. In this week's episode, we'll be discussing how to ace a job interview. Let's just jump right into it. So, in episode 16 of Lounge Talk with Laz, I discussed how to get a job interview, kind of going over the application process, how to spice up your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your portfolio. And in this week's episode, I wanted to take a chance to talk about the process for the phone interview or the on site interview and how to stand out as an applicant for that position that you're applying for. We'll first start off with the phone interview, and usually this is conducted by a senior recruiter for the company that you're applying for, and it's a little bit more high level overview just to kind of see if you're actually qualified for the role and didn't just kind of spoof a bunch of information on your resume. This is more, at this stage, a screening process before they send the information that they get from you during the interview to the hiring managers or the team or to the department that you're applying for. Typically, a senior recruiter will ask you one or two questions that are job specific for the role that you're applying for. But for the most part, they'll kind of see, based on your previous experiences, how you handle certain situations in the workplace. They'll also take the opportunity to explain to you more about the role and what it's about and what it will entail. And it's kind of an opportunity for you to ask a few questions yourself, get a better feel for the company, and if you will mesh appropriately with their company culture and vice versa. So a few questions to consider during the phone interview itself would be, for example, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced and how have you created a solution to meet those challenges? What are your biggest creative achievements? What's something that you're proud of in your previous positions? And along with those kind of questions, they might throw in a few hypotheticals or maybe even some behavioral kind of questions. So be on the lookout for those. You can kind of take a look into interviews on Glassdoor. It's a pretty robust place to look if the company is well known, and it'll have previous applicants kind of displaying the types of questions that they were asked, whether they were in a phone interview or the on-site interview. It's just a good way to prep, so that way you're not kind of floundering when somebody catches you off guard when they ask their questions. So be sure to take a look on that site and be prepared. I found in my interviewing experience that the phone interviews themselves will only last about 15 minutes or so, and a good portion of them will just kind of be you reiterating what's already listed on your resume and giving a little bit more of an elevator pitch to the recruiter that you're speaking with regarding what you did in the past and some of your achievements or accolades. So be sure to keep it kind of between the 1 to 2 minute mark for your elevator pitch and just kind of giving them a brief but decent overview of what you have done in your professional experience thus far. 2 tips for the phone interview is make sure that you are friendly when you're speaking with the recruiter. Obviously, they can't really see your body language because they're talking with you on the phone. So be sure to smile throughout the interview. And by smiling and kind of having a more energetic demeanor of sorts, it's a good way to kind of project that over the phone. And it is noticeable if you are not smiling when you are doing the phone interview. So just be sure to smile and it'll reflect in your tone when you're speaking with the recruiter. And the other tip would be to come prepared to the phone interview with a couple of questions to ask a recruiter towards the end. It's honestly one of the worst things in the world if they ask you any questions and you say, nope, I'm good. So you can either take a look into company news to kind of see what's been going on there and can ask a little bit more specific questions, or you can kind of keep it more high level and ask some things like, what are the biggest challenges of the department so far? How did this position come to be open? What are the next steps in the interview process? Those sort of things. And you can ask maybe between 3 to 5 of them and save other questions for the on-site interview if they do decide to move forward. Some companies may do a follow-up phone call with the hiring manager or a person from the department that you'd be working for. And this might come in the form of a video call or what have you. And again, the same rules pretty much apply as to the previous phone interview. And it's not until you get to the on-site interview that you're kind of in the final stretch. With the on site interviews themselves, those are much more rigorous, obviously, than the phone interview. Some companies will only have you interview with the hiring manager or potentially a team lead for the department, while other companies will have you sit on a panel of 2 to 3 hiring managers and team leads. I found personally that I enjoy panel interviews more than just talking to a individual person, but they can be a little more nerve wracking. So you'll find advice all over the internet that tries to tell you, hey, don't be nervous, be relaxed and confident. And it's really hard to kind of exude that demeanor or that aura, especially because you're applying for a job that you really want and you're speaking with obviously experienced veterans in the field. Hopefully, you would be at least. And, again, it can be really nerve wracking. So, what I have found for me to kind of calm the nerves is one, before the interview, if you have the opportunity to, go take a walk outside, go do some physical activity, or even, just change up your surroundings, go take a walk in the woods or in a park somewhere. It really is a good way to kind of calm the nerves. And I found that at least with walking, it allows your subconscious to kind of work things out internally and then kind of project to your actual conscious in a weird way, if that makes any kind of sense. So if you're kind of thinking about things too much and stressing out and you're trying to figure out some potential problems that could arise with the interview, it's a good way for your subconscious to kind of help you problem solve, or at the very least, just kind of calm your nerves. The other thing too is obviously you want to be on your A game when it comes to the on-site interview. And a lot of people will take caffeine or even chew like nicotine gum or things like that in order to, be at the most mental clarity as they can and the most alert. But this is actually a really bad idea if you're taking those things like an hour before the actual interview. In the morning, I guess that's fine. But caffeine and, to a lesser extent, nicotine gum or nicotine in general, they will give you the jitters of sorts and they will actually make you more nervous. So I would definitely recommend avoiding those if you're about to head into the interview in an hour or two. In order to operate at your best and be at your best, you should get a good night's sleep the night before and try to get maybe 8 or 9 hours of sleep. Don't spend all night cramming for the interview and prepping for potential questions they could ask or that sort of thing the day before, because you're going to be up, awake, you're going to be nervous, and it's going to filter into the next day, and you're not going to be at your best performing, so to speak. When you do go into the actual interview, try to arrive about 15 minutes early. And some people will scope out the location beforehand, so that way they can kind of time traffic, how long it takes them to get there, and they know exactly where they're walking to for the interview itself. And, even if you're showing up maybe 45 minutes early, I wouldn't walk up to the front desk and be like, hey, I'm an hour early for this interview at 3 o'clock. I would just kind of hang out, go take a walk around, sit in your car, look over some notes, and check in about 15 minutes early. Obviously, first appearances are everything. So when you go to the interview, you should be dressed appropriately. Some companies, it really depends on the actual dress code. So even if the company dress code is, blue jeans and a t-shirt, you should still show up overdressed rather than underdressed. I personally always play it safe and wear a sports jacket, a tie, dress pants, dress shoes. And I'm not really sure what the dress code is for girls, but, it could be to the same effect. Going off of first appearances, you do want to walk in and, again, kind of have that display of confidence, even if you are nervous on the inside. Be sure to make eye contact, smile, shake the hands of your interviewers, and kind of have that similar demeanor, even when you're speaking with the receptionist. Interestingly enough, some companies will factor in how you greet the receptionist when you come to check in. So, whoever you're meeting or talking to, even if it's just a receptionist or just a random employee walking down the hallway at the company that you're interviewing at, you should just greet them warmly, smile, make eye contact, ask how their day is going, and even just kind of make small talk as you're walking to the interview or the conference room. and just make sure there's no weird, awkward silences of sorts, Um, Kind of build that rapport and that demeanor even as you're walking into the conference room, because a little goes a long way, in my opinion. At this stage of the game with the on site interview, the company already kind of knows that you or any of the other applicants who have made it to this stage are qualified for what it is that you're applying for. And it's really just a matter of making sure that the applicants mesh well with company culture, and that they would fit well with the team, and that is a person that you would want to work with every single day, and not someone who comes in very humdrum, gloomy, isn't very communicative or team oriented, that sort of thing. Once you get to the conference room where you will be holding the interview, again, with demeanor and your body language, just be sure to be kind of laid back. One thing that I've noticed that helps me when I'm interviewing is kind of leaning back in my chair, keeping more of an open posture, and not necessarily crossing my legs, but kind of doing like an American style leg cross where your ankles resting on your knee of sorts. And that way it kind of helps to make sure that I'm not fidgeting under the table and bobbing my foot or my leg up and down and appearing antsy or nervous. I'll also clasp my hands in front of me. So again, that way I'm not exhibiting fidgety or nervous behavior. One thing I did forget to mention earlier is that when you get to the on-site interview, be sure to have a satchel or something professional to carry your notepad and a folder with your extra copies of resumes. I've heard that backpacks are actually considered to be not professional walking into the on-site interview itself, so avoid backpacks at all costs. And once you sit down, obviously pull out your folder with your extra copies of resumes. Make sure that your hiring managers or the interviewers do have copies of your resume to reference throughout the interview. And then you can either jot down notes on your notepad beforehand regarding the company and any news or things to reference back to, or have your questions written out on the second or the third page to reference once you get to the end of the interview. Once you get to the actual interview, it's important to reference Glassdoor and make sure that you're kind of aware of the procedure of the interview, and kind of having a rough idea as to what to expect, and being prepped for the potential questions that are going to be thrown your way throughout the on-site interview. Usually with a panel, the on-site interview will last maybe between 30 minutes to an hour, or with an individual hiring manager, it might last about 30 minutes. But, be sure to get comfortable and prepared for, the long haul, so to speak, with the on-site interview itself. Hiring managers will ask you a combination of hypothetical questions, behavioral questions, and just kind of touching base on your elevator pitch for your resume and anything that you've highlighted there. So at least for the behavioral and the hypothetical questions, you should have your answers phrased in a way that incorporates the STAR method. The STAR method is a structured manner of responding to behavioral-based interview questions by discussing the specific situation, task, and action. Just as an open-ended example, I've been asked by interviewers in the past if I've come across any challenges with my clients, and if so, how I addressed those challenges. And using the STAR method, you could say, with my situation, that my clients had a drop-off year over year with their digital metrics. And so the task for that would be to analyze their metrics, see where they dropped off, and then discuss with my clients new ideas or ways in order to boost or increase those metrics year over year. And then you would describe your action that you took in order to produce results. So as an example, with my clients' social media, they experienced a drop-off year over year of 30%. And so I sat down and discussed with them creating a social media calendar that was catered to their audience's peak times of traffic, and just creating more consistent and weekly content using photos and videos rather than just text-based posts. And by doing something like that, the results showed a 50% increase week over week for their social media presence on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And then a month over month result produced a 15 to 20% increase from that same time period the year before. I kind of just came up with that off the top of my head just now, but it highlights, obviously, again, the situation, the task, the action that you took, and the results that came from that action. And you want it to be short, sweet, and concise, between 30 seconds to a minute long for your answer in response to their question. And when you are providing examples or answering questions from your interviewers, make sure that you are never painted in a negative light or a negative result, and that you aren't speaking poorly of any clients or any of the previous companies that you have worked for. I have been asked quite a few times as to why I applied for the open position or why I would be leaving a previous job to apply for a new one with this company. And the biggest mistake that people make is just rambling on about how terrible their previous company was. And you need to come up with a professional answer, such as that you're looking for new opportunities, or that it's an issue of, breadth versus depth, where you want to become more skilled in one or two areas rather than having a general high level overview knowledge of many different things, or that you are looking to continue or further your professional roadmap, and that your current position with your company just isn't allowing for that, and that there isn't any advancement available pertaining to what you want to do in the future, that sort of thing. And again, as you're answering your questions, make sure to make eye contact, smile when appropriate, and it never hurts to take a few moments to kind of ponder or think thoroughly through your answer pertaining to a question through your interviewer. If it's a kind of a brain buster kind of question, it never hurts to ask your interviewer if you can take a few seconds to kind of think it through. And you can also kind of write down the question that they ask on your notepad. And then it's always a good thing to ask follow-up questions or just clarify with your interviewer certain elements to the question. So that way you have a more thought out and formulated response that will adequately satisfy whatever they were looking for. And with a lot of hypothetical or behavioral based questions, interviewers aren't necessarily looking for the right answer, and that there might not be a right answer. They're really looking just to see your thought process and how you solve questions or think things through and get a better idea as to, your mindset going into situations. Again, they will know that you are skilled or qualified enough to have made it to the on-site interview, and that they are very interested in you to be spending about 30 minutes to an hour of their day doing the interview with you. And it's, again, just to see your mindset, your process, and to see if you mesh well with the company culture. Once you get to the end of the interview and it comes time to ask them questions, then be sure to have your questions laid out. Ask maybe between 5 to 10 of them. And again, ask them things that are related to company news that are specific. Don't just have very generalized questions, but be specific in what you're asking. And just, again, treat it as if you're trying to get more insight into the company, or that you are, even interviewing the interviewers of sorts. So be sure to take notes and write down their responses, so that way it looks like you are very serious about, their responses, and that you do have quite the interest in the company itself, and that you're not just kind of sitting there dozing off as they're, again, giving you their formulated answers in response to your own questions that you have about the company. At the end of the interview, if you have business cards, you can always hand them to your interviewers as another way to stay in touch and connect. Be sure to, again, thank them for their time, shake their hands, smile, make eye contact. And if the interview went relatively well, good indicators are that they do give you their business card. They will show you around the office, or again, they'll just kind of walk you to the door instead of saying, okay, well, see ya, and then just leave the room, because that's happened to me before. And it's like, oh, well, I must not have done a very good job of this interview if that happened. So A good practice is to make the interviewers visualize yourself in the role. So asking questions like, let's say you do decide to move forward with this process, and I come in for my first day, sit down at my desk, hang up my coat, turn on my computer. What's the rest of my day look like in this role? Or even just asking them to, show you around the office or the workplace. I'm sorry, the workplace that you would be working at, and it's a good way to again have them visualize you in the shoes of the role already and make it an easier fit for when they are choosing between applicants and candidates for the position that you're applying for. After the interview is over, if you do have the contact information of the interviewers that you interviewed with, then you can pop them an email and say, very short and sweet, thank you for interviewing me, and kind of discuss what you learn more about the company based on the interview that you hadn't considered and that you would definitely enjoy working with the company in the position. Or if you flubbed up on a question that they had asked during the interview, you can take a moment in that thank you letter or email and say, you can extrapolate or expand upon the question that you flubbed up on and give a more in-depth answer based on, a little pontification or further thought after the interview itself. And if the interviewers didn't give you their contact information, then you can reach out to the senior recruiter and ask them, if you can write this email and have him or her forward it over to those interviewers. People think that thank you emails don't really impact anything, while others say that it might be what tips you over the edge and gives you that competitive advantage over other applicants and keeps you fresh in the minds of the interviewers. So my thought on it is it can't hurt unless you really screw up the email, and just keep it short and sweet. And again, it might be the determining factor that makes you a little bit more thought of in a positive light if you are competing against a very similar candidate of sorts. Usually with the hiring process, it might take between 1 to 2 weeks for the hiring managers to kind of get together and review the applications or the applicants and all the information that they've compiled to choose the right person for the job. So I would wait maybe between 1 to 2 weeks. And if you haven't heard anything back, then I'd reach out to the recruiters and just kind of ask for an update regarding the hiring process and where they're at with their decision. And if more than 3 weeks or even a month have passed by, then I would continue going through with other opportunities or conducting other interviews. And if something pops up in that time, then great. But if not, then you're not sitting there kind of wasting time and hoping and praying for an answer or a job offer from that previous company that you're waiting from. So that's my experience when it comes to the actual interviewing process, whether it's on a phone or on site. Hopefully you found this helpful in going forward with your own interviews that you'll be conducting in your professional roadmap. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video if you haven't. And I will see you next week for another exciting episode of the latest and greatest in digital marketing and social media news.